It's really funny when you think about how pop culture will change in light of all the scandals about sexual harassment. We've been forced to be reflective as societies, not just as the businesses involved and the consumers who have watched this for generations, but we've really had to confront the idea that we've silently allowed this bullying, what we can call now bullying, to go on of women in the workplace, such that women have felt excluded, harassed. We've also seen that this has been extended to men as well. Men get bullied and harassed, not just sexually harassed, but because of their gender, men can bully each other in ways that are specific to the ways that lads will be lads, boys will be boys. And that's had destructive consequences, not just in Hollywood and all of these instances coming to light, but equally we saw this in the seeds of the financial crisis of 2008, where the predatory lending came down to boys being boys. So now, how will things change? I'd like to take a look back to take a look forward, because if this is something that's been with us for so long and it's just been an undercurrent of our society, the way we've been socialized, then how will we be socialized differently? It often, as feminists argue, comes down to sexual agency, and where and when do we see a gender balance in sexual agency? There's still the undercurrent that men, for example, have a sexual agency and women don't. And if women do have a sexual agency, well, there's the mother-whore divide. Because sexuality for women is either a mother or a whore. So now, we see this in our popular culture, the seeds of every movie virtually, regardless of what kind of violence the superhero or hero or everyday hero commits throughout the episode or the film. His major aim is to save capitalism, to save the world, and to get the girl and marry her and make a real mother out of her. Now, I'd like to take a funny tour with this. Look at the 60s, and we had a vibrancy of, what we now even know as globally spreading popular culture through television, the 60s television. So it was one of the first to go global through syndication and now through, dominating media. There was a show called Bewitched, where there was a woman who, in principle, had power and agency in their relationship. She was a witch. But the whole crux of the show, and you see this from the very first episode, the very few minutes, where he's introduced as a red blood American, a red blood man, who bumps into this woman over and over and over. And so he decides to ask her out. And then they court each other and they like each other. Then he decides, to make a woman out of her. So he decides to marry her. And it's only then, on their honeymoon night, after he's ostensibly carried her over the threshold, that he finds out that she's a witch. Now, through all this, where has been her agency in any of this? And the rest of the show, the rest of the series, it was a very popular show, are about her concealing her power and trying to just fit in and not overshadow him. Now that was normal, funny, hilarious in the 60s. It was racially segregated. It was a middle-class family, and his objective, throughout the show was to save his job. Many of the follies throughout the show ended with the punchline of, maybe they made fun of some rich guy whose business they were courting as a marketing agency. This guy's profession was in marketing. Or, the wife had some ingenious idea to conceal her, witchcraft, but still, get into the play and save capitalism, save the guy's job, and save the day, and win the campaign. Often is one of the, reoccurring subplots. And even the mother-in-law gets involved. They all have the singular goal of concealing and containing this woman's power, this woman's agency into her role as a mother. So she has children, she's a niece, she's a daughter-in-law, she's a daughter, she's all these things, she's a neighbor. She balances them, and the show, in principle, is about her, centered on her. She's a witch, and it's called Bewitched. But the crux of the show is, how can she contain herself and be a normal, red-blooded wife? Now, if that hasn't changed over the years, if we haven't seen the extremes of, Sex and the City, where men weren't the central characters at all, to how do we really have this negotiation of Mars and Venus? What does it mean to have gender equality both in the workplace? We see that despite women being active there, we've had sexual harassment. It's just been the normal course of things. We've had starring leading ladies on screen, celebrating them, all the while recognizing that the obstacles that they face because of boys being boys all along the way. Terry Crews talking about this, boys being boys. He had his crotch grabbed. And he, even, you think a big black man, well, he shouldn't be threatened or intimidated by anyone because he's, right, always the threatening one, always the intimidating one. So what happens when he gets his crotch grabbed and yet he needs to survive in such an industry? The power relations there dictate that he says nothing for years, and that's what happened. Until the Me Too campaign and people started coming up. So you see the focus today is not just on empowering women, but it's creating greater gender equality. And that's what's different now. We're not talking about bra burning. You can burn a bra if you want to. Burn any bra you want to, but also burn the jockstrap. Burn the idea that because Terry Crews is a big black man that he couldn't be intimidated by anyone or sexually harassed by anyone, so you don't have to take it seriously. It's one of those falsehoods, one of the stereotypes that we see in popular culture, and why it's talked about shows like Bewitched, because those stereotypes about what people are, who they should be, they get, regurgitated over and over and over to us, and we believe them, and we measure even ourselves by those standards and not by our own authentic selves. And that's where bell hooks comes in. But that's the next video. Bewitched.